What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And the Jackson Dart debut is nearly here. Can't wait for it, man. It's Friday. We're previewing the game today. We're previewing what this Giants offense is going to look like now that Jackson Dart is the man under center and commanding the huddle. I can't wait for it, man. You all know, big Jackson Dart guy right here. I loved Jackson Dart during the pre-draft process. Alex really loved him as well, and we're happy that he's a Giant, and we're very curious to see what this offense is going to look like with him in the lineup. And that's what we're going to kind of spitball about today. We're going to talk about how this might affect the receivers, how this is going to affect the play calling, and really what our expectations are for the rookie as he gets baptized by fire, thrown in there with the Wolves with a great Los Angeles Chargers defense coming to town on Sunday afternoon. So, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And what are you expecting from Jackson Dart in his debut for the New York Giants?
Doing pretty good, man. And listen, expectations are high, but the weird thing is the players don't really feel like they're that excited. You know, like we've heard from Dexter Lawrence, we've heard from some players, Brian Daboll, and like everyone's a little bit down on the news. It feels like, except for the fans. Like I know you and I are both very excited about Dart's debut and what he's going to do, what this offense is going to look like, but the players feel blindsided by it. And I know Dan Duggan of The Athletic just posted about maybe 10 minutes ago or so that a lot of the players, the vibe is that they felt caught off guard and that they didn't like the fact they learned about it from social media. And Brian Daboll said, that's just this day and age. I'm like, dude, like, that's a bullshit excuse. You could have had them they had him in a team meeting, and they could have even texted them individually. I don't even give a shit if Dable's assistant goes and texts every single player individually saying, hey, we're making this change, just want to let you know before it gets out to the media. Instead, we hear it from the big dogs in the reporting world, and that's bad. Like Dexter Lawrence, you saw the interview, Anthony. I mean, look what he said. He was like, I heard about it like everybody else did. That's one of the superstars on the freaking team who just heard about the news that they're changing quarterbacks like everybody else, like you and I, like the fans watching right now, like you guys. There's something wrong there. There's something really wrong there. And the thing I think, and this is my very, very loose, like, perception of this, is that there is a big divide right now between Brian Daboll and upper management. I think Brian Daboll made this change off a whim. He went against what upper management wanted to do in the execution plan that they had. Daboll knows he's on the hot seat. He's basically got one last card to play, and he's not going to let them fire him before he plays it. That's kind of how I feel right now. Like, he was going to push his chips into the middle of that table before he got the axe. He was not going to go out without giving Jackson Dart a chance to save him. And I'll tell you what, Dart loves that dude, called him up last night, tried to have a conversation about the red zone, and Brian Daboll said, son, I'm trying to get my beauty sleep. We'll talk tomorrow. Obviously, they had a 10-hour meeting, apparently, the other day, but this is a really interesting situation where the Giants find themselves, once again, polarized internally. Their GM, their head coach, again, this is all speculation. I have zero idea. I don't know what's going on there, but I just want to make that very clear. It just feels like there's a divide. The vibe, the players, the reporters are saying they did not like how that was handled. Brian Daboll clearly did this off a whim. Clearly, he separated himself. He said, this is my choice, my idea, my move. He's clearly doing it against the will of somebody else. Otherwise, it'd be like, we decided it was time to turn the page to Jackson Dart. This would be a collective decision, Anthony. But no, it was Brian Daboll's decision, and he made it very clear that it was his. So, to me, there's something going on behind the scenes here that's not being reported.
Yeah, honestly, I have to agree with you. The things that we're seeing from this team feel so unusual. The vibe feels very unusual, right? I remember all summer, Alex, we were saying the vibe is so positive. Everybody's bought in. Everybody's happy with Daboll. Everybody feels good about the talent that's been added to the roster. The vibes were what got everybody bought into the season. And all of a sudden, the vibe shift, man, it's crazy because they feel low as ever. There's a general sense of apathy in the fan base right now. That's shocking. It's week 3. And how many fans are apathetic? How many fans are already deciding, we're not going to watch another game this season. We're not going to go to any games this season. We're not going to buy a jersey. We're not going to spend any money on this team. We don't even want to watch this team for the rest of the year. How many fans are saying that to themselves in week 3? It's startling. But what's more startling to me, Alex, is I get that same impression of apathy from the players right now. They seem like, whatever. It is what it is. It's a business at the end of the day, right? That's what Dexter Lawrence said about the benching of Jackson Dart. It's a business at the end of the day. And Dan Duggan, like you said, in his report, basically explaining the players they feel a little bit surprised by it, but they're just like, whatever about it. Because this team has been such a mess and a circus and a clown show that this is almost what's expected now. Doesn't sound like it's a rallying cry. That's what Dan Duggan said. It said it doesn't feel like this quarterback change was a rallying moment. It doesn't seem like the team is fully behind this idea and behind this change and rallying to it. It just sounds like they're accepting it, taking it on the chin and taking it in stride and saying, whatever, we're 0-3, we're a lost season regardless, I guess we'll go ahead and do what they say. That's the impression that I'm getting from the team, and that, like I said, is startling, and that's how you know Brian Daboll has a very short leash. This, we said it when it happened, this was a desperate move. Everything that we've learned since then confirms the level of desperation that Brian Daboll is moving with at this moment.
It absolutely does affirm that, and, you know, every step is one step closer to the guillotine. And ultimately, when you're looking at the situation, Jackson Dart, the amount of pressure on this kid, and I know we're going to talk about how the offense is going to change drastically. This system that they built, Mike Kafka, the whole, whatever they were doing with Russell Wilson was not designed for Russell Wilson. It was designed for Jackson Dart. They were running a system for a different quarterback. The only reason they were doing that is because they wanted the players to be ready for the transition, right? You don't want to have a whole system and then change it to something that the players are not familiar with. They wanted to be running a system. They wanted Rodgers. They wanted Stafford. They wanted other guys, right? So, you know, that's kind of the situation that they, unfortunately, actually, I think Jameis Winston would have been a better quarterback to have that transition with because their play styles are at least a little bit more similar. There's gunsling mentality, but, like, you know, that doesn't matter anymore. Russell Wilson at this point in his career doesn't have the mobility, doesn't have that, you know, that extra effort quality he used to have when he was obviously in his prime. I do think this system is going to look significantly different, but this is Brian Daboll's last chip, bro. Like, everyone sees it. It's not a hot take. It's not a cold take. It's the take. It is his last card to play. Even if he succeeds with Dart, I still think he's cooked. I think that Brian Daboll, if anything, if Dart looks good, if Dart looks like he can take that step forward, Brian Daboll may not even be thinking about keeping his head coaching job. He may be thinking about, this at least gets me into another coordinator position. You know what I mean? Like, that might be his perspective at this point in time.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. I think I don't mean to be so cynical, but I think that Brian Daboll is operating in a fashion that's self-serving. I think he's trying to figure out what he can do to. Yeah, he's trying to self-preserve. He's trying to save his job, and if he feels like that's already a lost cause, he's trying to set it up where he can get another opportunity next year or down the line. So it's very, very interesting. And Alex, I said on Twitter and I said on the show a couple of days ago that I heard from somebody close to the organization that there was a changing of the guard forthcoming. Very shortly after that, the Giants made the move to bench Russell Wilson. I knew what I was talking about. I heard what I heard, but I also will now say I heard that it wasn't just about the quarterback. It's about the coaching staff, and it has a lot to do with Brian Daboll and the shaky ground that he's standing on. And so, connecting those two dots to me, Alex, it sounds like the changing of the guard, this was a move to prevent a changing of the head coach guard. That's how I feel. I think this was a self-preservation move from Brian Daboll. I think it grabbed all the headlines. It did everything he needed it to do. Everybody's saying, the Giants, they're making the quarterback change. Daboll's got his guy. Now the whole media is rallying behind Brian Daboll all of a sudden, right? Haven't you noticed that? That there's now this bias shift away from Brian Daboll's bad coach. He doesn't know what he's doing. Now you're hearing the national media. You watch the Rich Eisen show. You watch ESPN, NFL Network. And what are they saying? Brian Daboll finally has his guy in the lineup. It's his time to shine. Yeah, maybe a lot of them are also acknowledging it's a desperation move to save his job, but it's no longer he shouldn't have his job. Now it's let's see if he can maintain his job with Jackson Dart. It was very much a self-preservation move, and I still believe, even though he made this move, that leash is still very short, and I think he's still a quote-unquote dead man walking from somewhere else that I heard that. So,
yeah, I mean, listen, I was just kind of gathering more intel, and there's reports coming out saying that not only were the Giants, or rather the players in the locker room, upset about the transition or, you know, benching Russell Wilson, which they understood that was inevitable. Like, they knew that was going to happen, but they actually were upset Jameis Winston didn't get an opportunity after Russell Wilson. Like, that they just went straight to Dart and skipped Jameis. So that's a perspective that some players, I guess, feel a little strongly about, because Jameis is a very popular player in the locker room. He's a very likable guy, and they brought him in as this player that could start. And but this also reaffirms everything we're talking about right now. You have no reason to start Jackson Dart, right? If this was a new regime, it was year one, they knew it was going to be a transition, a rebuild in a way, they were going to be kind of putting some new pieces in place, they would wait, right? They would wait until Dart naturally ascended into that role. But because you have a head coach on the hot seat, because you have a general manager on the hot seat, and they're 0-3, and they're a really tough schedule the rest of the way, you see, you could say, an escalation in tension, you could say expediting the process, and they could have went from, okay, well, Russell Wilson didn't look good. We do have Jameis Winston, though, who, by the way, could be a good player for us, like could have like a second coming or even a third or fourth at this point in his career. Who knows? Maybe he could add a little bit of a spark, intrigue to this roster, give Dart the time he needs to get there. But that's the problem with what their plan was, and they kept the coaching staff, and they kept things the same, and they hoped for different results, and that's on John Mara at the end of the day. That's not on anybody else but John Mara. He decided to give them another year. He decided, okay, this, and we said it at the time, but do you have any idea how insane you have to be from an ownership perspective to say, out there to the media, tell the media they have to come up with results or they're going to get fired? He said that very kindly, right? He basically said that, essentially.
And adding to that, we heard from Mike Garafolo, the number one guy who gets the best insider info about the New York Giants, because he used to be on the New York Giants beat, and now he's a national inside reporter. He said the day that the Giants decided to keep Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, that John Mara handed them a playoff mandate, quote unquote, a playoff mandate. They had to make the playoffs this season. Now that they're 0-3, how do you think John Mara feels?
Probably pretty shitty. But think about it from an ownership perspective. John Mara went out there, demanded a playoff mandate, which basically says, I have zero faith in this coaching staff. I'm demanding something that is unrealistic with this roster and this coaching staff, and then going ahead and letting them draft the quarterback that they want. Right? That is, in reality, insane. And look, Jackson Dart could end up becoming great. He could end up becoming the guy we always wanted, and this would be perfect and a beautiful send-off for them. They leave us with someone who we can actually build around, and I'll thank them for that decision. But from a reality and logical standpoint, your owner having a playoff mandate, demanding better results, giving them one last year, and then letting them pick their quarterback in the last year where it's do or die is the epitome of why the Giants are stuck in time. Right? Stuck in this position where they can't get out of it because the ownership is making decisions on a different timeline than what success looks like. You know what I mean? We might get lucky. Dart might be that good, and we might get lucky, right? But the Giants, more often than not, are not that lucky. So I'm holding my breath. I love the kid. I think he's good. I think he's going to be a good player. I got to see it to believe it because that's where I'm at as a fan. But hell of a ballsy move by John Mara to say, you guys have to make the playoffs, but I'm going to let you pick your quarterback anyway. That's a crazy decision to make. Now, transitioning from crazy decisions and hot seats and whatnot, I think we might have to retitle this episode based on how we've gone about this conversation. But let's talk about the offensive system and how it's going to change. We're going to see a lot more screens. We're going to see a lot more mobility. We're going to see a lot more of the middle of the field. And we're going to see a lot more, hopefully, by the graces of the good football gods, creativity. Because the offense we were running with Russell Wilson lacked all of that. Lacked an effective screen game, lacked the middle of the field, it lacked creativity, and it lacked mobility.
You know what else it lacked? Tempo.
That
was a big thing. All throughout the preseason, Alex, we were praising the tempo of the offense. And that was an offense that was primarily run with backup quarterbacks being Jackson Dart, Jameis Winston, and Tommy DeVito. We didn't see a ton of Russell Wilson during the preseason, but when we saw that offense really shine, we saw an offense with tempo, and usually with Jackson Dart running that tempo offense. You're right when you said at the beginning of this episode, this New York Giants offense was not built for Russell Wilson. It was very clearly built with Jackson Dart in mind. They built a scheme for a young quarterback who likes to play with space and tempo. That's what you see from the Giants offense. But you haven't seen a quarterback in there who's comfortable in that style of offense. I have a feeling, Alex, kind of just building on this whole thing, not to get into conspiracy theories or anything. I think Joe Schoen he signed Russell Wilson. He said, I don't want to throw Jackson Dart into the fire. I want Russell Wilson to start as many games as possible. Brian Daboll said, well, I just built this whole offensive scheme for Jackson Dart. We're not going to win games until Jackson Dart gets in there, so I'm putting him in, and we're going to try and turn it around. That's how I think this whole thing went down. I think there is a clear disconnect between front office, and I think there's a disconnect between the coaching staff and the head coach in particular. I think, again, this scheme was built for Jackson Dart. The way it ran so smoothly in the preseason. I mean, we're talking about it ran so smoothly, Alex, that Jackson Dart was stepping up there at the line of scrimmage and making changes to the play calls himself. Seeing one-on-one, saying, little Jordan Humphrey, you're running a go route, touchdown. That's the level of autonomy that they handed to Jackson Dart. Have you seen Russell Wilson do any of that in this offense? Have you seen him make those changes at the line of scrimmage to fire deep shots downfield? Have you seen him attack the middle of the field the same way that Jackson Dart did? He never felt comfortable in that offense. That much was very clear and obvious to me. This was an offense for Jackson Dart. And one other thing that I want to get your take on, Alex, again, not trying to be too much of a conspiracy theorist, but there were two moments in that Chiefs game that signaled to me Brian Daboll was done with Russell Wilson. I'll break those moments down. Number one, there was a 3-play sequence at some point in the game where Jackson Dart ran 2 zone reads in a row. The Giants were effective on both of those zone reads. Then they subbed him out, and on third down, they put Russell Wilson in to run the zone read. After gaining progress on both of the 2 Jackson Dart ran zone reads, they threw Russ out there to run the same play, and they lost yardage. That was...
You're going with this.
Yep, that was highlighting on film. This is why we need to move on. And then there was the red zone. The red zone sequence, right? How about the red zone sequence? First down, they run all out routes. Because why? Russell Wilson can't throw over the middle of the field. So they run 4 out routes. And then on second down, after the intentional grounding from Russell Wilson, they call a quarterback draw with Russell Wilson. All of those play calls were to say, look at the plays we can't run because Russell Wilson's in the lineup. Imagine if Jackson Dart was in the lineup. And we've actually got examples and evidence that he can run the quarterback draw because he picked up a first down on a quarterback draw in the preseason. He can run the zone read. He picked up yardage on the zone read in the regular season. They were putting plays, in my opinion, on film during that Chiefs game to highlight in the film room, Russell Wilson's limiting our offense. Jackson Dart can run it.
I kind of like being a conspiracy theorist. This is fun. I'll say this right now. Okay, so we feel like there's a little bit of a fracture between upper management and Brian Daboll. You can kind of feel it, you can kind of see it based on what he's saying. But if what you're saying is true, you want to know who is on the same side? Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka. Mm-hmm. Because Mike Kafka was calling those plays.
And did you see Mike Kafka's reaction to Jackson Dart taking over?
Probably so hyped.
The quotes. I am unbelievably excited to get to work with Jackson Dart. He was sounding like a kid in a toy store a week before Christmas. That's how glowing
so let me ask you a question.
He was.
Maybe it wasn't Daboll that was forcing this move. Maybe it was Kafka.
I think it was coaching staff forcing it against management. Right?
Yeah.
That I think it was the brain trust of Kafka and Daboll saying to management, to Joe Schoen and his front office, I can't run the offense that I built. Look at the film. Here's the examples for you. Can you please greenlight me putting in Jackson Dart? Realistically and truthfully, Alex, again, more conspiracies. I think that Brian Daboll wanted to start Russell Wilson in week 1. I think he saw what he did in the preseason. I'm sorry. Yes, Jackson Dart. Thank you for correcting me. I think he wanted to start Jackson Dart in week 1. I think he always wanted Dart running this offense. I think he built the scheme around Jackson Dart, and he wanted to walk into the season with Dart as the starter. However, Joe Schoen already made promises to Russell Wilson. By making promises to Russell Wilson, he made promises to the fan base.
It was a Schoen promise.
Yes, Joe Schoen made promises to people that Daboll unfortunately had to keep, but he always wanted Jackson Dart to be the starter. That's my personal conspiracy theory about the whole situation.
I don't think that's that off base. I mean, the way that Brian Daboll spoke to Jackson Dart when he drafted him, the way he was talking to him in preseason, I love you, you're awesome, like can't wait to, like, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to actually add to that. The way that Daboll spoke to Dart, how about the way that Schoen spoke to Daboll about Dart? We all saw the video on draft night. They make the trade up, they draft him, and in the behind-the-scenes video, Joe Schoen goes up to Brian Daboll and says, you got your guy. Good, congrats, you got your guy, Brian. He didn't say, we got our guy. He didn't say, hooray, Jackson Dart, that's the quarterback I want. He said, you got your guy, Brian. it didn't seem like it was a mutual celebration. It
Well,
seemed like I just
yeah.
did you a favor, Brian. You better actually do something with it. That's
Right,
how it
right.
read to me, and I know a lot of fans at the time felt that way.
Well, let me. Okay, let's keep going down this rabbit hole because it's kind of interesting. I want to see how far we can dig before it starts to become ridiculous. Um, the Matthew Stafford thing, that felt so Joe Shane to me, and the reason that felt Joe Shane to me is because Joe Shane understood one thing: I have to build a competent team, and the most important part about building a competent team is having a quarterback who can dominate no matter the scheme, no matter what happens. Like Matthew Stafford will be good, right? He will be good no matter what. He will, and if he's not, he'll force good. He will find a way to change things, right? Someone who has a voice and a respected one. That was his insurance. His plane ticket. That was his ticket out of mediocrity. It was Matthew Stafford. Of course, that never materialized. He went after Rodgers, a voice who could change things. That didn't happen. He went, and then the last resort, Plan C, which was heavily reported, by the way, that Russell Wilson was Plan C the entire time, was Joe Shane's last chance of getting someone who could force change. The problem is Russell Wilson's just way past his prime, and he has limitations that schematics will not cover up. Right? Rodgers can throw to the middle of the field, right? Matthew Stafford can not only throw to the middle of the field, he can throw the outside boundaries with ease, off a back foot. You know what I mean? Like different calibers of arm talent.
He could throw over the middle of the field without looking. Literally without freaking looking. So it's a great way to put it. Russell Wilson was last resort, Plan C, and I think it also incentivized the Giants to draft a quarterback because then at least they had a lifeline. So I think that's why Joe Shane did buy into that. Okay, like we'll get you your quarterback because we have to. Because it's our last chance at like saving face here. I actually think now that I'm thinking about it, let's get again, complete conspiracy, no idea what's happening. I'm a freaking idiot. I actually think that if it was up to Joe Shane, he would have went to Jameis Winston before Dart. What do you think about that? I don't think you're wrong. I don't necessarily think you're wrong. I think that Joe Shane really wanted a veteran quarterback this year. I think that's why they tried so hard to get Stafford, as you mentioned, why they tried to get Rodgers, why they signed two veteran quarterbacks. I think Joe Shane wanted a veteran under center. I don't think Brian Daboll agreed. I think Brian Daboll wanted to get his own guy to mold and to throw into the fire on his own. And I think that's where the disconnect comes from. So I agree with you. I think maybe if it was up to Shane, Winston would be QB2. And you think about it, Jackson Dart looked great in the preseason. It still is a little bit surprising, right, that he was the QB2, that he jumped Jameis Winston in practice reps super early on in training camp. I mean, he pretty much opened training camp as the QB2, Jackson Dart did. They didn't make it a quarterback one competition. They let Russ have the job, which they probably shouldn't have done. They probably should have made it a competition. But yeah, there was probably an agreement that, hey, you're going to start the season. But there was no competition. However, Jackson was immediately QB2 on this roster.
For what?
Little sauce, little fishy. Right. No, but even before then, because he was already taking the majority of QB2 reps.
Right.
Actually, Alex, not even at training camp. He started taking QB2 reps primarily during spring training, during OTAs. Yeah. So it seems, again, to me, like Brian Daboll always wanted Jackson Dart to be the starting quarterback. And he never wanted to build this offense around Russ. So he built it around Dart.
Well, that's correct. And now we're seeing the fracture, though, with Brian Daboll making this executive decision and then yesterday deciding, okay, we're not practicing indoors. We're actually going to go practice outdoors. He's going against the grain now. He's sending a message. This is a message he's sending to the front office. It is very clear to me. They're on different pages here. Daboll's is on his way out. He's lone wolfing this thing. He's like, look, if you fire me now, it looks even worse. So like he's basically pulling all the cards he has to just save face, to then show that he was right about Dart. This is like his last chance, right? His last chance. He just had the unfortunate reality of having to do it against Jesse Minter and the Chargers defense. But if he succeeds against them, he honestly, like, look, I know him and Joe Shane are like good buddies, like good friends, but from a working perspective, friendship and business relations are vastly different. I think that right now he is going against what Joe Shane really wanted to do here, and I think that we're seeing it with what he's actually trying to execute. But I will say this, Anthony, the vibe I'm getting right now from this organization is that they feel like they do have talent on this team. They feel like their draft classes have been better, their free agencies have been better. At this point, am not fully convinced that they will fire Joe Shane if they fire Brian Daboll. I do think that there's a possibility here that they only fire one of them, and it will be Daboll, and I do think it's possible they do keep Joe Shane.
I don't think you're completely outside of the realm of possibility. I think that if it happens that way, I'll definitely have a level of frustration, and I'm probably going to call for a clean house in the next few weeks here. But I see where you're coming from, and from what I've heard from things, Joe Shane's going to see the season out. Joe Shane is
Yes,
going to see the season out.
I
He
would
will not
agree.
be fired mid-season. I've heard that. So again, and things change. So who knows? And things are rapidly changing with the New York Giants right now. So at any given moment, they could change their mind and they could fire Joe Shane. But I've heard he's going to see the season out. Brian Daboll, that's not the case. He is a dead man walking. He
On the
is
hot
on
seat.
his
Yeah.
last leg. He's on the hot seat. I don't think the heat is nearly as turned up high for Joe Shane as it is for Brian Daboll. I think he sees the season through and they reevaluate at the end. And you're right. Let's say that they do make a coaching change. Imagine this, Alex. What if they do fire Brian Daboll in week 7? All of a sudden, Mike Kafka steps in and he goes even for the rest of the games this season. Well, then Joe Shane's probably going to look like, hey, I did give a good roster to this coaching staff. We just had a head coach who didn't know what to do with it. You should keep me back for another year and let me play out my contract. That's totally possible, and that's probably the way that Joe Shane plays it. And that's why you said Shane and Dable are buddies. I don't think they're buddies anymore. I think they have very conflicting interests for self-preservation. I think
Yeah,
they are working against each other right now. I think you're
dude.
100% right. The reason Dable put the team on the rainy field yesterday, he did that
Yeah.
to say, I'm no longer listening to you, Joe Shane. I know this is how you want things done. This is your protocol. You want them practicing inside. I'm doing it my way. I'm putting them outside on the field to spite you. I started Jackson Dart to spite you. Again, maybe I'm conspiracy
Yeah.
theorizing, but that's how I feel about this, is how this whole thing is reading to me. It feels very spiteful, and it feels very lone wolfish, like you said.
It does. And by the way, you play at MetLife Stadium, an outdoor stadium. Go play in the fucking rain, you pussies. What are you talking about, bro? I'm saying the players are pussies, but management. Like, what are you fucking talking about? You're gonna go play at MetLife Stadium where the wind is swirling, it's raining, there's a hurricane overhead. But nah, we gotta practice indoors and not be prepared for that reality. You know what I mean? Like, come on, what are we talking about? That's not on the players, by the way. They're just listening to instructions. So if you're a player, like, you're just doing what you're being told to do. That's on management. You gotta practice how you play, dude. If you want to play in the rain, you gotta win in the rain. You gotta play in the freaking rain on practice days. So nonsense to me. Toughen these players up, and they treat them like freaking dolls. My 17-year-old daughter's playing with their dolls the same way that Joe Shane's treating this damn team in terms of the protocols. Let them play in the rain. Grow some balls. Have some toughness. I know for a fact that old management way back when would have done that. You know what I mean? Like, these guys would be treated tough. Like, they get away with murder half the time. In terms of just consequences. Like, they get away with so much losing and inconsistency and failure. There's no consequences for failure, which, by the way, trains these players to fail. You know what I mean? If you accept failure, if you reward failure, you teach them how to fail. You teach them the mental components of failure and that it's okay to be a losing team. And these players, by the way, Anthony, know that. You saw Dexter Lawrence's face. He looks like he's failed. Malik Neighbors, he doesn't know what it's like to fail. He came from LS freaking U. But he's learned how to fail right now with the New York Football Giants. They need to teach these players that winning is not a requirement, it is a necessity. Right? It's something that they have to demand from each other. It's not something that just comes easy, that they just put in the work and that's a result of it. It is something that you have to demand. That doesn't come from what we've seen in this coaching staff. And Brian Daboll, I think, is going outside the norms. He's breaking that kind of barrier. And we have a lot of talent on this team, right? And to a credit to Joe Shane, there's some moves he's made that have been great, right? Like Brian Burns and extending Lawrence early. And, obviously the problem with Joe Shane's methodology is that a lot of our good talent comes because we're picking in the top 10 every freaking year. So you're automatically going to get the cream of the crop in terms of prospects. Automatically. Even then, we've managed to screw those guys up. Evan Neal, obviously, I don't even know why he has a roster spot at this point. Not that Deontay Biggs is a top 10 pick, but they've destroyed his development. But again, there's another element to this. Joe Shane could draft the players. The coaches actually have to develop them. Exactly. So there's a multifaceted approach here. That's Joe Shane and Brian Daboll used to be good buddies when the pressure wasn't on them. You know what I mean? Brian Daboll had Josh freaking Allen as his quarterback. He made everybody look better, right? But let me finish. I'll finish here and then I'll let you go. The problem is that Brian Daboll and Joe Shane walked into the Giants as a tandem, and they basically were like, we're gonna kick ass, we're gonna win, we're gonna be the most loved tandem in football, it's gonna be amazing. They did not realize the downside of that. The downside of that is what you just said before. That friendship is fractured. That friendship is probably skating on thin ice right now, because now they're fighting against each other, because both of them worked their entire lives to get up to this point, head coach, general manager, and now they're both trying to survive, and one of them has to be sacrificed. Right? That's the only way. They're either both gone or one of them is sacrificed. Those are the only two options now at this point. So now they're looking at each other. They go into that meeting together, and they look at each other and say, which one of us is being sacrificed today? And right now, Brian Daboll's fighting like hell to try and twist the narrative that it's not my fault. Because he's taking the heat. The head coach takes the heat. Yep. That's just how it goes. General managers don't speak to the media very often. So Daboll's tired of it, I think. You get the sense. I get the sense. Daboll's tired of taking the heat. He's trying to turn it the other direction. Now, I don't know, complete conspiracy, but it checks out in my brain, which is a bit crazy sometimes, so I'll give you that. But I don't know. It's just, if you can feel the fracture, man. It feels like there's something rumbling in East Rutherford.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page about it. I think we see it the same way. Again, yeah, a lot of this is speculation, theorizing, whatever. But I think a lot of fans are probably going to agree with us in the way that we've broken it down, and they're going to feel the same way that we do. You mentioned Josh Allen there, and that's what I was going to jump in and say, and I'll kind of say that and then head towards wrapping up with some more on Jackson Dart in the offense. But Josh Allen, has anybody noticed how much better he's gotten since Brian Daboll left? I mean, the guy was really good when Brian Daboll was there. He started to become an MVP candidate. He is the MVP now that Daboll has left. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily correlation and causation. I don't know. But all I do know is that Josh Allen has succeeded in spite of whatever coordinator has been there coaching him. He just is that talented. He just is that good at football. Yeah, Brian Daboll deserves credit. He helped him get there. Brian Daboll was a good coach during his time in Buffalo. Good offensive coordinators don't always make good head coaches. We've learned that many times in the past. Pat Shurmur is another example of that. But with Josh Allen in particular, that was Brian Daboll's calling card. It was, hey, I developed Josh Allen and helped him become the star. Maybe Josh Allen put in the work and Josh Allen made himself a star. I remember I watched that video, Alex, about how Josh Allen reworked his fundamentals in order to become a more accurate passer. He didn't do that with Brian Daboll. He hired an outside third-party trainer to teach him how to move his hips, swing a golf club, and then throw a football. That was how Josh Allen learned to become a more accurate passer. That was something he did on his own time. And that's when he started to see the growth in his game. So, again, we've had a lot of ideas, perceptions, and narratives about Brian Daboll and his quarterback guru label. Well, we've stripped him of that label by now. Maybe he can earn it back this season with Jackson Dart. I'm not so sure. And like I said a few episodes ago, if Jackson Dart looks legit, get him a better head coach to work with. Don't tie the two at the hip. Because if Jackson Dart is legit, the same way that Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, and Josh Allen have all been legit, all of those guys have had OC and coaching changes, and they've been either better off or just as good because it doesn't matter to them who's coaching them. They're just talented. So, like I said, if Jackson Dart looks legit, then don't say he looks legit because of Brian Daboll. Say he looks legit because Jackson Dart is a talented young man, and you want to get a better coach to maximize Jackson Dart. That's the way that the New York Giants need to see this, and how they need to treat the development of Jackson Dart, in my opinion.
I agree with you, but it even goes to show even more so how this move from Daboll and how what he said and what he's done in the last couple days is a complete shot at the front office. It's a complete, I'm doing it my way, and you can't do anything about it, right? Because think about the narrative spin. If the Giants fire Brian Daboll before he got to play Jackson Dart, think about what the spin would be. It would be how you let this guy draft him and you never let him even play, like coach him for a down. You developed him for the last couple of months and he's been working with him and you just took that right away, right as we were about to see it. It would make the Giants look like the bad guys. But if the Giants wait and Dart struggles, then they can point the direction at Daboll and say, you're the bad guy. We're putting the blame on you. You're the scapegoat. Not to say that he's a scapegoat, because he obviously has been poor. But you're the guy that we're going to put the blame on, and everyone else survives, and then we move forward and we put the blame on you. And then, that's how the Giants operate these days. Like, they just put blame on people, and then they keep doing the same things over and over again that frustrate us. But Daboll is recognizing that in real time and saying, okay, I know what that media spin is. I know I have a little bit of room left. I have this one card left to play that they can't fire me before Jackson Dart starts a game. So I got to pray to the good heavens, right? Why do you think he's been treating Dart like his last ticket? You know what I mean? Why do you think he's been speaking to him? I love you. You're amazing. Like, you've been excellent. I've loved his progress. Like, I've never heard a quarterback a coach go up to a quarterback who has literally been his coach for 4 months say, I love you. Okay, this is not a guy who's won a Super Bowl with Jackson Dart or even had any success or even played it down in the NFL. This is like everything that's happened and materialized up to this point suggests that Brian Daboll views him as that final chance. That last, like, he is at the casino. He's been there all night long. He's losing. Last $100 in the account. He's taking it out and he's putting it on freaking red, baby. This is Jackson Dart. He is red on the roulette table for Brian Daboll. And if he hits red, now he has $200, but that doesn't guarantee he's going to walk out of there positive. He might end up getting fired anyway. He may end up walking out of the casino with nothing. It's a damn good analogy, actually. So, I do think that's where he is. He's at the casino. It's 4 a.m. He is freaking dead to rights. He's got one last shot to make some money today.
Yeah. And I'll add on to this analogy. He's also throwing Jackson Dart's marble onto a roulette table that has an extra 0 on it. And that's that Jesse Minter defense. He's playing against some really bad odds right now because Chargers defense
it's not 50-50.
Is fucking legit, dude. It is not 50-50 chances of black and red here. You got to keep in mind those green spots on that roulette table, they'll get your ass, and he's spinning against those this weekend. So it's going to be interesting. Regardless, though, I'm pumped, dude. I'm excited to see Jackson Dart, man. I'm excited. I can't wait. I'm not excited because, Brian Daboll's got his guy. No, it has nothing to do with Daboll. I'm not excited to see Daboll coach him. I'm just excited to see Jackson Dart. I just like Jackson Dart. That's how this feels. I've actually heard Rich Eisen describe the NFL like that before. He said that the biggest reality TV show in the world is the NFL. And that's why it makes so much money. And it's so true. Absolutely true. And that's why there's all these storylines and there's so much to react to. There's so many moving parts and it's so much fun. And hey, people sit there and they watch Love Island. They do all their little conspiracy theories and stuff. We had a little fun speculating today. No harm, no foul. We'll see how it goes from here. And obviously, anything else that we hear, either independently from our sources or through the media, we read an Art Stapleton report, whatever, we'll continue to update you guys on everything that we hear right here on Fireside Giants. And do expect a lot of breakdowns next week about this Jackson Dart debut. I've already got somebody lined up, a film expert, to appear on the channel to break down that debut, and we're going to try and get some other experts involved as well. We know that you guys are going to be following the Jackson Dart era intently. The best place to follow along with the Jackson Dart era and the inception of it, it's right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts and crazy conspiracy theories down below in the comment section. If you listen on Apple or Spotify, do make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we will catch you all on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Jackson Dart.
Perfect.